They brought me to St. Catherine's on a Tuesday. I don't remember it, obviously. I was newborn. But Sister Margaret told me the story enough times that it became legend. A figure in a hooded robe appeared at the door just before dawn with an infant wrapped in a blanket that was too fine for an abandoned baby. No note, no explanation. Just a child who shouldn't have survived whatever circumstances brought him there. Sister Margaret was young then, new to her vows, and when she opened the door that morning, she said she could feel it immediately. The weight of something sacred, something terrible. The hooded figure stood on the threshold holding me, and she knew without being told that this was a foundling. Another orphan for St. Catherine's. Another soul entrusted to the church. "What is his name?" she asked, reaching for the bundle. A voice came from beneath the hood, quiet, neither male nor female, just sounds shaped into words. "Silas!" The bundle was placed in Sister Margaret's arms, and the robed stranger turned to leave. She called after him. "And what is your name?" The figure paused, didn't turn back, just spoke over its shoulder, one word that fell into the morning air like a stone into still water. "Azrael." Sister Margaret's face went pale. She looked down at the infant in her arms, at me, and when she looked up again, the threshold was empty. No footsteps, no sound of the gate closing. No trace that anyone had been there at all, except for the child she was holding and the name hanging in the air. Azrael, the angel of death, the one who separates souls from bodies, the ferryman, the ending made manifest. She told Father Benedict immediately. He dismissed it, shock, exhaustion, a vagrant with a cruel sense of humor. But Sister Margaret never forgot. She'd whisper it sometimes when she thought I couldn't hear. Delivered by death himself, like I was marked, like I'd been brought into the world by something that should have taken me out of it instead. They named me Silas Church, the first name given by a stranger who might have been an angel or a nightmare, the surname chosen by Father Benedict because I had none, because I belonged to the institution now, because my identity was bound to the place that raised me, whether I wanted it or not. I learned to read from the Bible, learned to write copying psalms, learned that questioning was the same as doubting, and doubting was the same as sin. They raised me to believe I was meant for the church, that my very existence was divine intervention. A baby delivered at dawn by a hooded figure who called himself Death. How could that be anything but God's plan? I was a good kid, quiet, obedient. I went to Mass every morning, served as an altar boy, memorized my catechism without complaint. But even then, even as a child kneeling in that sanctuary with incense burning and Latin prayers washing over me, I knew something was wrong. Not wrong with me, wrong with the story they were telling. Father Benedict taught us about the crucifixion when I was 8. He stood in front of our small classroom, 12 orphans in uniforms that never quite fit, and explained how Jesus died for our sins. How God loved us so much he sent his only son to be tortured and killed so we could be forgiven. How the blood washed us clean. I raised my hand. "But Father, if God loved us, why did he let Jesus die? Why didn't he stop it?" Father Benedict smiled that patient smile they all had. "Because justice demanded payment, Silas. Sin requires sacrifice. That's how love works." I didn't understand. Still don't. If I loved someone enough to die for them, I wouldn't let them kill me to prove it. I just loved them. But I didn't say that. I learned early that questions made the priests uncomfortable, and uncomfortable priests meant consequences. Extra chores, longer prayers, sitting alone during recreation, so I stopped asking out loud. The anger came later. Not all at once. Gradually, like water filling a cup, one drop at a time until suddenly it's overflowing and you can't remember when it started. I'd feel it spike during Mass when Father Benedict talked about obedience, about accepting God's will, about not leaning on our own understanding. I'd feel it in confession when I'd admit to impure thoughts and get assigned 10 Hail Marys like magic words could change what I was thinking. I'd feel it in the orphanage common room when the older kids talked about being adopted, about families who'd chosen them, while I sat there knowing no one was coming for me. Delivered by death, marked by it. Maybe that's why no one wanted me. But I controlled it. I was good at that. When Marcus Delgado, bigger, older, mean, shoved me into the wall during recess and called me church boy, like my name was a joke, I didn't hit him. I walked away. When Sister Margaret caught me reading a book about evolution and confiscated it, telling me that Darwin was the devil's science, I didn't argue. I apologized. When Father Benedict made us memorize the Nicene Creed, and I stumbled over one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, because the words felt like gravel in my mouth, I just repeated them until I got it right. The rage lived in me like a second heartbeat, always there, always controlled, always waiting. I aged out of St. Catherine's at 18 with a high school diploma, $200, and a letter of recommendation from Father Benedict describing me as a young man of quiet faith and steady temperament. They helped me find work, maintenance at a Catholic hospital downtown, and let me keep attending Mass at the parish even though I wasn't technically part of the orphanage anymore. I got an apartment, paid my rent, showed up to work, went to confession once a month and lied about what I was actually thinking. The questions never stopped. They just got louder. I'd sit in the pews during homilies about God's mercy and wonder why mercy required a crucifixion. I'd take communion and think about how Jesus overturned tables in the temple, how he called the Pharisees hypocrites and vipers, how he touched lepers and forgave prostitutes and told people the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. That Jesus made sense to me, the angry one, the one who looked at religious authority and called it what it was. But then the priest would talk about the cross like it was the point of everything, like God planned the torture and death of his own son, and I'd feel that rage spike again. Feel my hands tighten on the pew in front of me. Feel my jaw clench so hard my teeth ached. I'd leave before it got worse. Walk it off. Go home. Pray in my apartment because praying alone felt safer than praying in a building full of people who'd call my questions pride. By the time I was 23, I'd stopped going to Mass regularly. Just Christmas and Easter. Appearances. Enough to keep the sisters from worrying, to keep Father Benedict from calling to check on my soul. I still believed in God. I just didn't trust the men who claimed to speak for him. Then Father Carmichael arrived. I heard about him before I saw him. The parish was excited, young priest, energetic, fresh ideas. He transferred from somewhere in Pennsylvania after his previous assignment ended. Sister Margaret mentioned it in passing when I stopped by St. Catherine's to drop off a donation. You should come hear him speak, Silas. He's wonderful, so passionate about the gospel. I didn't go, didn't care. I'd heard enough priests talk, but the stories kept coming. Father Carmichael started a youth group that actually drew kids. He played guitar during Mass. He visited people in the hospital, spent hours sitting with the dying, prayed with families in the waiting rooms where I mopped floors. People loved him. Even the ones who'd been lukewarm about faith suddenly showed up every Sunday because Father Carmichael made church feel alive again. I heard whispers too, quieter. Rumors that something had happened at his last parish, that there'd been an accusation, a settlement, a family paid to stay quiet. But no one knew for sure. No records, no proof. Just the kind of talk that followed priests sometimes, the kind the church buried under lawyers and confidentiality agreements and strategic transfers. I didn't think much about it. Rumors were everywhere. And honestly, I had my own problems. My landlord was raising rent. My car needed work I couldn't afford. I was picking up extra shifts at the hospital just to stay above water. Father Carmichael and his guitar masses and his charisma weren't my concern until I needed my baptismal certificate, job application for a better position, better pay. They wanted documentation, birth certificate, baptismal record, proof I existed in some official capacity. I didn't have most of it. Abandoned baby, remember? But St. Catherine's kept records. They'd have my baptism certificate in the parish office. So I went back. Wednesday afternoon, middle of the week, the church would be empty. I'd grab the paperwork, thank whoever was in the office, and leave. 10 minutes, tops. I walked through the side entrance into the sanctuary. It was dim inside, just the votive candles burning near the statue of Mary and the sanctuary lamp glowing red above the tabernacle. The smell hit me immediately. incense, and old wood, and that particular mustiness that only exists in Catholic churches. I'd grown up with that smell. It used to mean safety. Now it just meant questions I wasn't allowed to ask. I headed toward the hallway that led to the administrative offices, my footsteps echoing on the tile floor. That's when I heard it. A sound, muffled, wrong. I stopped, listened. It came again, a whimper. Small, scared, coming from the confessionals at the back of the sanctuary. My heart didn't just pound, it detonated. One beat, then nothing, then a cascade of hammering so hard I felt it in my throat, in my temples, behind my eyes. My hands curled into fists without me telling them to, fingernails biting into palms. Heat flooded through my chest and down my arms, that specific burning that comes right before violence. My vision tunneled, the dim sanctuary narrowed to a single point. Those 3 confessionals against the wall, dark wood with purple curtains. I knew that sound. I'd heard it before. In the orphanage, late at night, when one of the older kids would corner a younger one in the bathroom. I'd heard it in the hospital when families got bad news and children didn't understand why their parents were crying. I knew fear when I heard it, and hearing it here, in this place, from behind that curtain, my jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth grind. My breath came shallow and fast through my nose. Every muscle in my body coiled tight, ready, waiting. The rage I'd kept buried for 23 years surged up from wherever I'd locked it away, and I could feel it pressing against the inside of my skin like something trying to get out. I walked toward the confessionals. 3 of them lined up against the wall. The sound was coming from the middle one. The curtain was pulled shut. I should have called someone. Should have gotten Sister Margaret or another priest or literally anyone else. Should have done anything except what I did, but I didn't. I grabbed the curtain and yanked it open. Father Carmichael was on his knees. His pants were undone. His collar was off, tossed on the bench beside him, and there was a boy, maybe 10 years old, small, wearing a Catholic school uniform, pressed against the wall with Carmichael's hand over his mouth and Carmichael's other hand. I didn't think. The door I'd been holding shut my entire life. The one that kept the rage contained, controlled, buried. It didn't just open. It exploded.